Hey, everybody.
Hey.
We're about to get started with Aging Insight. Hope you enjoy the show. Got some fun stuff to talk about today, so should be good. Here's the opening intro.
Welcome to Aging Insight, the only show dedicated to your elder care concerns and your resource for learning about how to manage your health, housing, financial, and legal needs. This is a live call-in program featuring John Ross and Lisa Schulmeyer, elder law attorneys and senior advocates for the Art Latex. Aging Insight is dedicated to helping you navigate the challenges and blessing of growing older. So call in and ask your questions. The number is 903-793-1071. Now here are your hosts, John Ross and Lisa Schulmeyer.
Merry Christmas, everybody. This is John Ross, here live on Aging Insight with my faithful co-host, Lisa Schulmeyer.
Yes, we are live on Aging Insight on the Saturday before Christmas.
So work never stops.
Yeah, no, it's for a lot of folks, it's a nice 4-day weekend, but got some things to do. And besides that, for a lot of our listeners that are out there, we didn't want to leave you hanging.
That's right. Well, and maybe you're out doing a little Christmas shopping,
I don't know, John. As I was driving into the studio this afternoon, I drove past Central Mall in Texarkana.
Uh-huh.
Typically, a couple days before Christmas, the mall would be, the overflow parking lots that never get used would be full, and they weren't.
Yeah.
So, and it was 11.
Right. So it wasn't like the crack of dawn or anything.
Right. So, that's prime shopping time, I would think. So I don't know if everybody's just ordering everything online and having it delivered, which if you talk to the UPS man, you talked to this morning.
Yeah. And he said that's all he does, basically. He's an Amazon delivery.
Yeah. So lots of folks are ordering packages, and, I don't know, maybe people just have decided that, not quite as many gifts, maybe they're kind of cut back. I don't know, but
who knows?
But I was really surprised because I do know that in years past that the mall was such a zoo that if you didn't go early or super late, I tried to avoid it during peak shopping, but it didn't look so bad. So I guess, if you still have shopping to do, there's some traffic. It's heavier than normal, but
and for most of you guys out there, your Christmas shopping starts in 2 days. So start getting
Monday. Ready. Yes. So
and for those of you who are online shopping, while you're sitting there scrolling through the internet, get over to your Facebook account and you can check us out live on Facebook. That's where we're always at on Saturdays, along with being here live on the radio. So you can call in if you have a question. Phone number is 903-793-1071. Or if you're on the Facebook, you can put a question in the comments or just give us a little thumbs up or a like or whatever. Share it out with your friends, and so everybody gets all that good information. And
right. So, today I know we're going to get to the government shutdown, and
that stuff's coming.
That's coming. But John, these gifts and the gift giving made me think about. I've seen a slew of articles in the news recently about those DNA kits that you can buy that apparently that like from 23andMe, Ancestry.com. Anyway, the deal is, I think National Geographic has one. The deal is that you buy the home kit, you spit in the tube,
right?
You send it, you mail it back in, and 2, 3, 4 weeks later, you get a report.
Mm-hmm.
And it breaks down your DNA supposedly by, your ethnic background.
Right, you can find out if you're a Native American, for example, or not one.
Or not. And then some of them, though, they will do a report to where they show you where your relatives, your closest DNA matches are in relation to your location.
Yeah, and supposedly ancestoring. What's the term for that? What do you call
genealogy?
It? Genealogy. Yeah. So if you're into genealogy, apparently that's according to something that Lisa read.
Yeah, that was a BBC article, I think, in The Guardian. They said that genealogy was the second most popular hobby pastime in America, right behind gardening.
Yeah, I don't believe any of that, really.
Yeah,
But it is popular.
It is popular, yes.
I saw a former banker that I know, and he was commenting on Facebook about doing some genealogy research, and
Well,
he was actually going so far as posting family photos into the ancestry.com,
right.
one of those, I guess, so that other people then, if they're doing their searches, would see those same things.
Yeah, no, so it's certainly popular, and so those home DNA tests, the prices on those have really come down, and so but for $100 or less, you can do these DNA tests, and they've become very popular as gifts.
Right. Well, and I will say that it at least in my personal life, it has become harder and harder and harder to come up with gift ideas.
Right, especially for older relatives. They're telling stories and whatnot. And you think, hey, we'll do this DNA test, and we can prove, and great aunt, can have her proof that she's Native American or Scottish descent or whatever, and something kind of cool and different. So that's been a very popular gift. But John, the articles talking about the gift of the DNA test, well, number one, they've said they're not super accurate,
right,
on a lot of the ancestry stuff, as far as what ethnic groups or what country of origin your ancestors may have come from. So they're not super accurate. They're not really a regulated business. So when you buy one of these test kits and you spit in the tube and send it off, they have their terms of service, and they tell you privacy of what they're going to do and not do with your DNA sample.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just the whim of the company.
Yeah, well, it's the whim of the company, and of course their own personal internal security, which
everything gets hacked.
Yeah, you look at these gigantic tech companies that certainly seem to know how to navigate the internet, and they get hacked.
Yeah.
So yeah, and there's a large amount of information that can be determined, not just your family information and where you're from, but there's one of these companies that they will check the length of your telomere.
That's what we talked. Yeah, we talked about that last week, John.
Yeah, and I guess my thing is you could use the length of the telomere to determine your risk of dying, and certainly insurance companies could use that as a determining factor.
Yeah, well, right now there is a law in the books that prohibits insurance companies from discriminating against you, but due to any DNA results. But John, I know that one of these companies, if you send your DNA in, and all you're looking for is sort of a origins profile, what European country, African country, what all did I come from? And that's all you're wanting. And so you pay, there's a lower price for an origins test.
Right.
But when they send you your report, apparently, when they send you the report via email,
mm-hmm.
they offer you an instant upgrade for a health profile report.
Right.
And so, John, here's the deal. If you just punch in your credit card and go ahead and pay them a little bit more money, and they can instantly show you the results of your health profile.
Yeah, it's because they've already done it.
Right. So even though you didn't ask for that, they've already run it. The other thing is, on these DNA tests, you can choose to share your results with researchers.
Uh-huh.
And the idea is that these are blind results.
Sure.
The researchers don't have your DNA correlated with your name and identity, if you believe that will always be true.
Right.
I don't know. But I guess the really reason I wanted to talk about this is because with it being a popular gift idea, because John, like you said, it's hard coming up with gift ideas sometimes. But apparently families have been absolutely torn apart over the results of these DNA tests.
Yeah.
And what starts out as fun turns out to be horrible.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Because with this DNA information, you can find out all kinds of things, like who you're related to, or more importantly, who you're not related to?
Right. So one of the stories that's been out is a lady who she was one of 5 kids, and I think she was the youngest. And she was really kind of into the genealogy stuff, and she'd been doing those researches and going to conventions and stuff. So when the DNA testing kits came out, she thought, well, that would be super cool. So she got a kit, and then she got a kit for her brother. And so they both did the kits and sent them in, and the report came back, and it identified her brother as her half brother,
Right.
and not her full brother. And so she said she kept this news to herself. So what she did, thought this was ingenious, she ordered another kit, and she went. Her grandmother was already passed, but her great aunt was living.
Okay.
And on her father's side.
Uh-huh.
And so she had her great aunt do the test, didn't tell her exactly why, just said, hey, it's going to be fun.
Right.
Anyway, when her great aunt's test came back on her father's side, it showed absolutely no relation between her and her great aunt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she knew at that point that her father, who she had known as her father, was not really her father.
Yeah. Whoops.
And so she said, I kept the information to myself for several months. And she said, but then I was, my mother was sick, quite elderly, had cancer, was battling that. And she said, it just bugged me. And I just couldn't lose my mom and not ask her.
Right.
And so she said that she did one day over tea.
That's a lovely conversation.
Yes, she told her mom that she did the DNA test and what the DNA test had shown. And she said her mother was shaking. And she said her mother was a very proud Yankee. And for her to shake and act that emotional was very disturbing. But anyway, her mother did admit that she had been unfaithful. And that the daughter was a product of an illicit affair with her boss.
Wow.
And of course, this lady involved, she was in her 50s.
Right.
John, this has happened so many times that the companies that are marketing these tests now have training sessions for their customer service representatives when the inevitable call comes in about why are these results, because they said what happens is people call into question the accuracy of the results.
Yeah,
and
the accuracy.
And they said, at least as far as your close relations, they measure certain things. And that part's pretty accurate.
Right. Yeah, that part's well established.
Yes. So they have actually trained their customer service representatives to do some crisis counseling. And they said that for depending on your age group, the older you get, paternity fraud, if you want to call it that, where a child is actually not the child of the husband in the real, and is somehow is predicted at almost as high as 30%.
Wow. 30%.
Yeah. So
yeah. So think about it. As you're considering purchasing one of these, you got a 1 in 3 shot of not finding out something that you didn't want to find out.
Yeah. And, of course, in the older generation, there wasn't DNA testing and all that kind of stuff. So, like this lady's situation, she kept the affair a secret and just, passed off the child as child of her husband's. And there's another story where the man in the same boat, and he said, when I saw these results, I just couldn't believe it because my mother was the most upstanding, Christian woman. And, he said it was just, because it really affected our relationship for the rest of her life.
Yeah, I mean, So yeah, you have a distinct possibility of destroying Christmas.
Yeah. So, and in fact, one of the testing services, I think 23andMe, they say with the little directions and warnings with their kit, they actually put on those warnings that this kit has the potential to alter your life and worldview.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's some truth. And,
I would too. Well, we've got a caller calling in, but we're right at the break point.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We'll be right back.
But we'll be right back. So just call back here in a second and we'll get you on. So stick around, everybody. All right. Of course, we're still live.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I was reading all that stuff and I was like, oh, so yeah, what you think is fun may not, for a lot of reasons, the paternity stuff, but then the health stuff too.
Well, now my favorite story here is for anybody that knows me, I have my parents, my mother who pretty significant Native American ancestry, so dark skin, black hair, father, black hair, and then you got me. About as red as it comes.
So you're not getting your mom a DNA test for Christmas.
Well, so there was this. So years ago, I was a teenager probably, and we were all sitting around, as you used to do, where you're watching TV together, and it was a 60 Minutes special, and I remember this. We're watching the 60 Minutes special, and it was about these babies switched at the hospital.
Yes.
And then they had been raised, and they found out later in life or whatever that they had been switched at the hospital, and I said, well, see, look, that may explain it. Maybe I might not even be y'all's kid. And my dad looked at me and just deadpan said, well, you may not be mine. So that's
the right attitude, I guess. But apparently there's a big Facebook group for people who have done these DNA tests, and they call it you're an NPE. You got an NPE result, not the parent expected.
Yes, the not parent expected result.
So
that's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, when you're a teenager, you just know you're adopted because you cannot be
that's
related
right.
to those people.
Surely not these people. Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
But yeah, this kit has the potential to alter your life and worldview.
At 30%, I mean, that really is.
They said that's the high end. They said that at the different age brackets, it varies, but
so yeah, like I said, that's a good way to ruin the Christmas with something that's supposed to be fun. Yeah, not that part, not so fun, probably
not. So anyway.
Well, and of course, a lot of those
things. The privacy stuff. You don't know what they're going to do with that.
Yeah, it is a bit creepy. All right, we got about 30 more seconds. Of course, everything's creepy. Did you see the guy in Europe? He requested from Amazon the recordings from
his Alexa,
from his his Echo, and they about 2 months later they sent him 170 gigabytes worth of stuff, and it was mostly other people. So they had sent him other people's.
Oh.
So he could listen to whole conversations from other families.
Wow.
All right, here we go.
903-7.
All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Lisa Scholmeyer here on Aging Insight. And we were just pointing out in our first segment that those little box DNA testing deals might not be the best Christmas present. Could be fun, or as one company says, it could be life-altering and alter your worldview. So choose carefully. But
I would probably skip this as a Christmas present.
Yeah. Well, and John, the other thing is, I've actually have clients who've asked me about this, particularly some of my gentleman clients who've said, I've got these kids, but I don't know of any other kids, but I don't want to, I don't want somebody coming in and challenging my will. And so we actually have a way to make sure and exclude any unknowns out there by the proper legal drafting.
Yeah, I mean, one thing you want to think about is in a will where you dictate who your family is to be able to say, these are my kids, but these are also the only people that I'm providing for.
Right.
Even if there are maybe some others out there.
Yeah.
All right, we got a caller. We're going to see what they want here.
All right, let's see if I can get this. Okay, caller, you're on the air on Aging Insight. Oh. Well, that's right. I said, well, there is a law against it, at least. Well, sure. Well, and that, so yeah, for our Facebook list watchers, the caller is talking about, if the insurance company is prohibited from using that information to discriminate and do your rates for underwriting, but yet the law could change in the future. And that's exactly right. There's already the Medical Information Bureau out there. So whenever you do get a life insurance policy or health insurance and you were asked about your health history, did a parent or grandparent, did they have, high blood pressure, diabetes, that kind of thing? That information is already compiled. We know that. And right. Yeah. Well, and I have seen a couple of life insurance companies who've ended up canceling policies when their insured posted photos of their last skydiving trip on their social media. So insurance companies, they're in business. They want to collect money and they want to limit the payment out of their claim. So
yeah, and I mean it's certainly easy enough for these for these DNA results to be tied back to you and your purchases
absolutely.
And everything else. So and of course the other thing is although the insurance companies couldn't use these, that doesn't mean that the information is not potentially subpoenaable by a court in some other context.
Well, right, and I think that is one of the deals they're talking about using these DNA databases for, is to test a rape victim, kind of CSI,
right.
And can, even if someone doesn't have any criminal history, but they did one of these tests, and they end up turning into a rapist, well, then they might be caught just from the review of that database.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Thank you so much for calling. Basically, I'm just going to say that I don't know. It seems like a lot of companies have made the sharing of our information to seem fun, but yet you're the product.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Facebook is the same way, as we've all been learning. It was fun to connect with your high school classmates and, post some pictures from your vacation. But really, all that information is stored. So someone, if I turned into a criminal tomorrow, they could put together a pretty good profile.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in this day and age, if you would like to get away from all of this, you basically need to go buy you a cave.
Maybe so.
And move into it. All right, so we're going to take our bottom of the hour news break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about how the government shutdown will or will not affect particularly our client base, the seniors out there, people with disabilities.
I'm having a deja vu feeling, John. It seems like we've been through this before.
Yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I didn't even have to download any new pictures for the Facebook Live because I already had them from the
last government shutdown.
Yeah. So that's how long we've been doing Facebook Live and how frequently the government seems to get shut down.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, everybody just stick around. And of course, if you have any questions, you can give us a call. And while you're on the break, get on Facebook, check us out live, share the video, give us a like, all of that good stuff. We'll see you in a second.
TFS, home of the Rush Limbaugh program.
Ooh, that was loud. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be doing any of the 23andMe business.
Yeah. Just for general privacy concerns.
Just for general privacy.
Absolutely. Concerns. I figured as much.
Yeah. Seems like the best bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was don't ask the question if you don't want the answer.
Right.
That's always that's just kind of a classic piece of advice right there.
Well, and since we're still on this, I guess, but one of the other big areas that this has impacted is anonymous sperm donors.
Oh, yeah.
Because if they have a close family member that does one of these tests, then when the sperm donor conceived baby becomes an adult and does one of these tests, it will connect those other sperm donor family members with that adult.
Right. So you at least know it's somebody in that family.
Right. So basically for sperm banks, they're now really having to tell their donors that there is no guarantee of anonymity any longer, because, you know, it could be your second cousin that does the test that you don't ever talk to. So, I mean, and you've not told your family that you're a sperm donor. I mean,
right. Yeah, you needed $50 back in 1995.
Right. So, but you know, just all kinds of implications. So, anyway.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's a crazy time that we live in.
Yeah. So that Amazon deal of the day for that Ancestry.com DNA test box was marked down from $99 to $79. It's not looking so good.
Not so much. Is this your water?
Yes. So yeah, but who knew?
So yeah, go with the G.I. Joe for the Christmas present.
Yeah. You know, you're just going to think of something else for, you know, Aunt Gladys.
Yeah.
So, well, and of course, the other thing is, I was talking to a client the other day who's the one that kind of raised the concern. But he said the reason he has that concern is because something very similar happened in his family, to a cousin, and apparently his great aunt at some point was shipped off to a maternity home, gave birth, baby was put up for adoption, and now with all these tests and everything, it's all kind of connected. So
yeah,
and you know, he told me, he said, you know, we don't think of our elder family members that way.
Yeah, but they were people.
And that's what I said. I said, you know, life's not changed.
No, it hasn't ever changed. Really, it's all of these have been issues forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it does go back to the planning, though. I mean, that's why the language is so specific, in particularly when we're drafting out these wills, and we will include family information, and say things like, you know, I have these two children. Throughout this document, the definition of children is referring to those two, and no others born to or adopted by me prior to the date of the will, or something to that effect. So you're essentially excluding any others that might be out there.
Right.
And you might think that, well, just because you didn't know who they were, and so they wouldn't have a right to come back in, you would be wrong.
Right, that's correct.
I actually had that situation. It was probably about a decade ago. I had a young man call. He said his father had died in a helicopter crash in Waco, and he had never met the man. He had impregnated his mother and moved, and had never seen him. Never been, he had kind of kept up just tangentially. The son had just kind of, followed the guy or whatever, but he had remarried, had kids, whole deal. And anyway, he was just wanting to know if there was anything involved there. And I got to call the attorney that represented the deceased gentleman's estate and inform her that there was
another child.
There was another child, and man, were they surprised.
Yeah.
And not pleasantly so.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Here we go.
Have a question? Phone 903-793-1071. Now back to Aging Insight with John and Lisa.
Welcome back to Aging Insight, everybody. This is your host, John Ross, here with Lisa Schulmeyer, and we're going to kind of move on to our second topic for the day. We're going to get off destroying your family members by buying them a DNA test segment, and move on to the government shutdown. Big news this morning. I was on the treadmill over at Gym Box this morning, warming up, and They always have they have two TVs right next to each other, and one's always playing Fox News and the other one is playing CNN.
Right.
So I guess we're giving the full spectrum there.
Yes.
And both of them had clocks counting
Oh,
in the
until
bottom
until
on
the shutdown.
No, because the shutdown has started.
Oh, how long it's going.
So we both news programs were running live clocks counting how long the government shutdown has been going on so far. And so, yeah, we are in a government shutdown. This is not the first time. We had one during the Obama presidency over the Obamacare, and
Yes.
and the longest one back during the Bill Clinton era.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, do you remember during the Obama one that they closed the World War II memorial?
Oh man, I was so mad about
Remember
that.
that? And then like these World War II vets who were there for their, what do they call, the freedom flights or whatever, had to storm the barricades
Yeah,
of the National Park Service.
Yeah, they were literally blocking them from the World War II museum, which is not, or the World War II monument, which is just a monument. I mean, it's just a monument out in the middle of.
Yeah, it's an outdoor monument.
It's an outdoor way. You just walk up to it.
And I was like, these guys stormed the beaches. They're not going to be cowed by your orange cone.
Yeah, but they had just basically wrapped yellow tape around them.
Yeah.
I mean, that was about the dumbest.
Yeah, it was all political theater. But so first question that seniors always have is, will anything happen to their regular Social Security deposit?
Yep, and the short answer is no.
Absolutely not. Washington may be playing political games, and maybe for good reason, maybe not. That's a whole different question. But they know better than to mess with the deposit of Social Security checks.
Right, and then all of this boils back to the funding portion of this. Social Security checks are not part of the annual budget.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me, John. Speaking of what's part of the annual budget, I saw a statistic the other day on the run up to the shutdown that said over 80% of government funding is on autopilot.
Right.
Which means it's not affected regardless. So over 80%, which means Congress, basically they don't do a budget. So they just pass a bill that puts the funding on a continuous funding mandate.
Right.
And there you go. So, and of course, the most of that continuous funding is entitlements, which I think they do classify Social Security, quote, as an entitlement. Don't call me and tell me it's not an entitlement.
That's just what they call it.
Yes.
It's not what we call it.
But
we don't want your angry phone calls anyway.
But anyway, so Social Security checks will keep coming. There shouldn't be any delay with that.
And that's your regular retiree Social Security. That's your Social Security disability benefits, and it's also your SSI, your supplemental security income. So if you have a disabled adult member of your family that's on SSI, they are also still going to be receiving their SSI benefits.
Right. And the same is true for any veterans pension programs, retirement, the military retirement. That is going to keep being funded and deposited. Now, John, the one caution with the Social Security and the veterans benefits and retirements is that if you are in the middle, or the disability, is if you are in the middle of an application process, then your application is likely to be delayed.
Right, because the staff, the personnel that are processing those applications could get furloughed, and that would stall the application process. Now, right. I understand applications for Social Security benefits that would actually continue. Those would continue to be processed.
Yeah.
But other services within the Social Security Administration, like getting a copy of your Social Security card, getting a new Social Security card, something like that, some of those would be delayed. Speaking of veterans, also your treatment at veteran hospitals, VA hospitals, all that continues as well. Matter of fact, I think just here locally in Texarkana, I saw an email the other day that was basically saying, hey, if you've got appointments that they're still going to be made, don't worry about it. Just keep coming in. Don't pay too much attention to the news there.
Right. Then it says, what about tax returns processing?
Yeah,
that's a big deal for our seniors.
Yeah, they're still going to get their money.
Yeah. They said the processing could be delayed if workers are furloughed.
Right.
But that's still in process.
And you still have to pay yours.
Yeah, you still have to pay your tax. You don't get furloughed from paying it if that's the case.
No, that's right. So yeah, I mean, most of that sort of stuff, that all keeps going. You can cross the border if you like.
Yes. So yeah, TSA,
Customs,
customs.
U.S. Border Patrol, and of course, a lot of these sort of things go back to the rule that what do they call them? Critical functions.
Right. Yeah, because they only shut down what do they call it?
Yeah, it's
Now you've got me all messed
yeah,
up.
non-critical functions or something like that. Which I do always, every time I hear it, I always think to myself, why does the government have? Yeah, why does the government have non-essential programs?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, you know, I can see that they should have essential programs.
Well, I just imagined this morning that, the director of the National Arts and Humanities Council found out they weren't supposed to go to work. I would say, non-essential.
Right. Yeah. So there's your non-essential folks. For if you're on some food benefits, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, TANF, which is the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, and the WIC program. Most of those are all previously funded.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes back to they've already paid for those things. The states already have the money. So your food stamps, your all of those sort of things are going to stay in place.
Yeah, the hospitals and your doctors and everything will continue to receive their Medicare reimbursement and, be able to process your Medicare claims. Although, John, it is interesting because our office met with a client yesterday who their family member was being discharged from a facility, and they are appealing the discharge decision.
Ooh.
So on the back of their discharge notice, it says, if you don't agree with this, because it's a Medicare paid for service, if you don't agree with the discharge, then call this number and file an appeal. Well, they did.
Okay.
And normally those appeals are reviewed within 48 hours. But this was yesterday, John, which is the weekend before Christmas.
Right.
And a government shutdown. So I kind of wonder what the timing is going to be on that, because I would think that reviewing appeals, I don't know, I think that's kind of non-essential, but I don't know what the classification is.
It certainly would seem like that's something that could get put on the sideline there. And interestingly enough, I mean, speaking of non-essential, I really enjoy the Smithsonian. In fact, most of the museums in Washington, D.C., I really like to go see. But they're actually going to stay open through the 23rd. So if you've got a Christmas vacation planned to Washington, D.C., you're still going to be able to go to the Smithsonian. You'll still be able to go to the National Zoo, and most of the national parks around the country will be open.
Yeah, but I did see that what they call the comfort stations, that would be the public restrooms along the National Mall up there in D.C. They're going to close those, which I think is, again, some political theater. Because if you're walking, down the mall and you really have to use the facilities and you can't find an open facility because of, the shutdown, so to speak,
right?
Then boy, you're pretty mad. And it really brings it home. It's very personal.
I would say so.
And apparently the parking enforcement is still going to be done in DC as well.
Oh yeah, now there's an essential there's an essential service. Now, of course, if you are going to DC, though, the Library of Congress will be closed.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Which is your favorite, and also your son's favorite.
Yes, it is. But so for many of our seniors, what they depend on their Medicare, their Social Security. Perhaps they're a veteran, retired, or receiving some veterans disability or some other aid and attendance pension. There is no change, so do not panic.
Right. Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's really. I mean, there will be some additional effects along the way from if you're a federal employee and you get furloughed and stuff like that. But for our client base, the ones that are worried about their Social Security and stuff, it's fine. You're gonna be fine out there.
I mean, it's fine from government shutdown. I mean, I guess we could talk about borrowing the money to pay it. from
Yeah, well, that's
China
a
or
yeah, that's a
something.
yeah,
That's a whole other
that's
topic.
a whole other topic. All right, we're going to take one more break, and we'll be back in a second. Yeah, now for you web savvy people. Then, of course, if you're watching Aging Insight live or one of our recorded versions, and you're this far through the program, then you're probably also a podcast listener. In which case, check out Big Picture Retirement. That's my podcast, and we actually just recently recorded an episode on whether or not Social Security is going to go broke, and the borrowing and all of that, and most of the stuff that you hear about that. Is some political theater as well. It's still going to go broke,
Right.
but not for the reasons that everybody thinks it is. Not for a lot of the politics of borrowing the money from China and stuff like that. So, in fact, my co-host Devin Carroll, if you check out his YouTube page, which just search for Devin Carroll on YouTube, he's got a whole video on just that subject. And if you really would like some comedy, then read the comments in that video.
Oh.
Because man, did he poke a bear.
Oh.
So yeah, he got lots of gnashing of teeth in the comments. They even somebody even made fun of his shirt.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, Devin, kind of a big target.
Yeah. Well, of course, they said he, never. Well, they said never listen to somebody who buys their shirt at Goodwill. And
Well, no, I mean, if
Devin
you're a
was like,
financial
"Man,
advisor,
Devin was like, man, I paid a lot of money for this shirt.
if you're a thrifty financial advisor, I don't know, that might be a compliment
Yeah, no, that's right. That's saving some change right there.
instead of paying for a label. But yeah, I don't really know what else there's going to be to talk about on the
Government shutdown.
government shutdown. So,
Well, we'll stretch it out. All right, and geez, yeah, we still got another 30.
yeah, but
almost a minute.
because I remember the last time they shut down the national parks and and everything, and it was just so silly.
It really was.
And the whole World War II thing, that was like the worst possible PR you
Oh,
could
yeah.
ever get.
Yeah, no, I had actually posted a Facebook post that I'd specifically offered my services to escort any World War II veteran across that line. Yeah.
Well, and because the World War II vets didn't get a memorial until, gosh, what, 10 years ago? 15?
Yeah,
I mean, it hasn't been that long compared to the Vietnam Memorial,
Right.
and some of the others, and so. I think it was after Saving Private Ryan came out that Tom Hanks really got behind the memorial, and so.
All right. Well, we got 5 more seconds, and we're back live.
Have a question? Phone 903-793-1071. Now back to Aging Insight with John and Lisa.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Aging Insight. I'm Lisa Scholmeyer, here in the studio with John Ross.
That's me.
And today we've just been kind of all over the board a little bit.
Yeah, we
But,
have. But we needed to talk about the Social Security, the government shutdown stuff, just because people get even just in my own personal Facebook feed of news and stuff, I have seen various posts that are just basically not true.
Yeah, well, and
some of that fake news.
Yeah, no, and I spoke with a lady earlier this week, and her daughter's fiance was getting his visa processed and was scheduled to come in, and when they talked about the government shutdown, they were like, what is this plane not going to be able to land? Is he not going to be able to get through, customs and TSA? And she said, my daughter broke into tears and was so upset. And, I just want to.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
yeah. All of that stuff is going to keep going. So yeah, it's again, the government shutdown only applies to, first of all, it only applies to things that are funded with the annual budget.
Which hardly happens ever anymore.
Yeah, and all of the things that they're taking money out of your taxes for, so your Social Security and stuff like that, all of that stuff is fine. And then on top of that, it it only affects the non-essential services.
So yeah, so for instance, active duty military is considered an essential service.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I have seen a lot of things in my news feeds about active duty military, and so lots of people posting about, where will their loved one get paid, and that's an active duty, and the answer is yes.
Yeah. Now, the only other thing that's been on the news here quite a bit, which doesn't relate to any of this, but I just thought about it because I think it's interesting, is this GoFundMe account.
Oh, the GoFundMe account for the border wall.
Yeah, that thing. When I looked at it this morning. It was at 14.5 million.
Well, I think it's an excellent barometer, I guess you would say. Although I also saw, John, on that same deal that somebody on Twitter doxed all of the contributors to the border wall, which doxing means that you maybe reveal their true identity or their address or phone number.
Okay.
So somebody who is not supportive of the border wall somehow got the information to all the donors and was doxing, if that's the term they use, the donors.
Well, and I know they've already, I've already seen where they had done a hit piece on the guy that set it up.
Yeah, wasn't he a former military person?
Former military, amputee, veteran. But yeah, apparently had posted some fake news on his social media account.
Well, yeah, but I also saw somebody that commented, "Hey, I'm not in favor of the border wall, but the people who are paying for it, and I don't get taxed on it, so win-win."
Yeah, and of course, it is kind of an interesting from a tax standpoint. Is really who owns? The GoFundMe is not a charitable entity.
I'm surprised they haven't shut it down, frankly.
So when you get no charitable deduction for donating to a cause on GoFundMe.
Right.
But the question to me is always, basically who owns the account.
Right.
And like in this case, I guess the guy that set it up is going to be the owner of it.
Yeah.
And so is this income to him?
Yeah. Well, of course, the other deal is when you set those GoFundMes up, you can set it up to where only a certain person can withdraw the funds.
Right.
So, for instance, I know locally here in the Texarkana community, there was recently a GoFundMe set up to pay for some funeral services for a gentleman that had been a longtime employee over at one of the hospitals. And a lady set it up, but the funds could only be withdrawn by the funeral home.
Right.
So I don't know what the deal is on the border wall.
Yeah, but this does bring up an interesting point when because with that GoFundMe getting a lot of attention, and then here locally with the funeral for the local gentleman, where that money was raised.
Yeah, where is it? Is it income somewhere?
Yeah, and particularly in cases, the one thing that I have actually had pop up 3 or 4 times here in the last, say, year or two, is where let's just say a family was in a car wreck, mom was
tragedy. Yes.
Mom was killed, child was severely injured, is now handicapped, just an absolute tragedy. And the people in the community rally around and raise money, maybe for the benefit of that child or the benefit of that injured adult. And essentially what's happened is they are unintentionally disqualifying them potentially for government assistance benefits.
Yeah. Yeah.
So often these folks have been able to qualify for things like Medicaid benefits, but right now the law is very unclear within the Social Security Administration as to who technically owns these. So if you raise money for person, and that person is on government assistance, does that money count towards their, say, $2,000 limit of assets for SSI?
Well, I think the moment the money's turned over to that person, I think absolutely. Now, if it's sitting in a GoFundMe account and the person has no control over it, then I would think not.
Well, and then that's where some of the stuff comes in, because I think the Social Security Administration is looking at it as, well, if it's for the person, even if it hasn't been distributed yet, they can still count it. Kind of like they could a trust that was set up for the benefit of the person that doesn't have the right language in it.
Well, and I just don't know how that works. I don't know if you set up a GoFundMe account, if and that you set the campaign to go for so long that, as the money, because I'm sure, GoFundMe charges a percentage off those accounts.
Yes,
so I would think that, I don't know if you have to let the campaign run the entire length that you set it up for before it can be dispersed, in which case I don't think it's taxable. But if there can be partial withdrawals during the campaign, sure. If there could be withdrawals, absolutely.
And I think there can. I think you can withdraw the money during the campaign. So anyway, we don't know. Yeah, it's a mess. But anyway, the government shutdown got me thinking about, is it gonna affect customs and stuff like that? Well, no. But then of course that got me thinking about the border wall, which got me thinking about the GoFundMe, which then carried me
that rabbit trail
right on through to whether or not GoFundMe. So man, we have covered a bunch of topics today. Yeah,
it's been a very eclectic show today.
That's right. So we started out with the ancestry.com. If you do get one of these 23andMe or Ancestry DNA kits or whatever the heck they're called, if you get one of those as a Christmas present,
you might just have to hurt some feelings by telling your family member you're just not going to do it.
Yeah. Or if you do it and you find out some stuff, good time to look back at your estate planning.
Yes, call us. John, I did see on one of the stories, though, on the DNA deal, that somebody sent in a sample from their golden retriever.
And what happened?
The company never said it was a canine sample.
Really?
Really.
What? They actually sent back a report?
Yeah. I don't know exactly there, but they didn't admit that it was a canine sample. And again, some accuracy issues.
Yeah, well, that's probably right. Yeah, I would say stay away from it unless you're pretty open to whatever results come out.
That's
and
right.
Whoever may end up with the information.
Now, so of course this is the last show here before the Christmas is right around the corner. So for our listeners that have been listening with us all year, we thank you and certainly wish you a very Merry Christmas. And John, as you reach a certain age, the best thing about Christmas is the food.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're
about to go cook some of that ourselves.
Yes, we are. We got to get on top of that. So.
All right. Well, listen, we appreciate y'all listening, and we hope all of y'all have a very Merry Christmas. My thought for today's program was just going to be to have Lisa sing Christmas carols for the whole hour.
Well, you would have turned your radio off. I'm sure.
She refused. So instead, you got our little mismatch of topics. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you've enjoyed all year's worth of topics. And if so, you will get more in the new year.
More of the same.
Yeah, more of the same. Of course, we've got one more episode before the new year.
Yeah.
And then we got a whole brand new year worth of stuff coming. So we appreciate it. Hope you enjoy the show, and we will see y'all.
We'll be back next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. And we'll see all of y'all